Welcome to the Undisputed podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. They've got a busy slate, so skip Shannon. Let's get to it.
The Cowboys have signed Aldon Smith. 1-year deal, $2 million base, $2 million in sack incentives. Aldon Smith will be 31 years of age come September. Originally, he was the 7th overall pick in the National Football League, and for his first 4 years for the 49ers, he was as dominating a pass rusher as there was in this league. But Aldon Smith has not played a single game since November 15th of 2015. Why? Because of multiple suspensions for violating the NFL substance abuse policy and its personal conduct policy. We're talking about DUIs, one involving hit and run. We're talking about weapons charges. We're talking about multiple domestic violence issues. We're talking about multiple rehab stints. But our very own Jay Glazer has been involved in Aldon Smith's latest recovery program. And Jay said last night via tweet that Aldon Smith has been clean and sober for the last 9 months. And now I'm still quoting Jay here. And that it's incredible how much he has turned his life around. So Aldon Smith is now filed for reinstatement into the National Football League. And I ask you, Mr. Sharpe, Pro Football Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Will this gamble pay off for Jerry Jones?
Skip, before I address the football side of this, let me first start by saying, hopefully, Aldon Smith has cleaned up that side of his life. Hopefully, he has chased these demons away. Because, if you look at it, his first 2 years, he had 33, if I'm not mistaken, 33 and a half sacks, which was the second most since the sack became an official stat in 1982 behind Reggie White and Derek Thomas. And we know how dominating of players they were. But so hopefully, because he had some demons, Skip, that weed wasn't involved. We know he got suspended. He failed a drug test and all that other stuff. But there are some things that happened outside of that we believe that there was something more heavily involved than marijuana. Now, with that being said, Skip, if it's hard for me to believe a guy can miss the amount of time that Aldon Smith has missed and come back and be dominant like he was. Skip, we saw Josh Gordon miss a year, and he was never the same. Can you imagine missing 4 years where you haven't been playing football? Skip, football probably was the furthest thing from his mind. He's trying to reconcile and get his life together. Hopefully, like Jay said, he's been clean the last 9 months. But Skip, it's just hard for me to believe. Skip, we remember when Michael Jordan took a year and a half off. Skip, that first year back, half a year back, Skip, he wasn't even close to being the Michael Jordan that we saw. And then he took the 3 years off. Now, mind you, he was he was 37, 38 when he came back that second time, Skip. So we understand that Aldon Smith does have the element of age on his side. But Skip, you start missing time like that. Look at Tiger. When Tiger took that time off, how Tiger look? Yes, he could have spots and spells where he's dominant, but we haven't seen that dominant player. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he can recapture what he once was. Skip, remember now, he came out in that 2011 draft. We know that arguably is the greatest draft ever. Because if you look at Cam went 1, Von Miller went 2, and Richard Sherman was in that draft, and J.J. Watt was in that draft, and Julio and A.J. Green. Skip, we know the names. Aldon Smith went 7 overall. So that tells you what the 49ers thought of him, and he was rewarding them handsomely until the demons got a hold of him and he couldn't get control of his life. So I really hope he turned that side of his life around and he can get back on the field, because I do believe he deserves a second chance, and hopefully he can cash in on that. But to answer your question, is this long shot going to work? Skip, if you really look at it, the only long shot that Jerry Jones has signed since he's on that team is Charles Haley. You look at the Greg Lloyds and the Pac-Man Jones and all these other guys that he's signed, Skip, they haven't panned out. Haley panned out. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out.
Okay. You make too many good points. But I'm going to say, just barely, that I like this move. I'm going to say just barely. I believe this move will pay off for Jerry Jones and my Dallas Cowboys. And yet I'll be the first to admit to you, Shannon Sharpe, maybe I'm as desperate for a pass rusher as they clearly are, because they hope to keep Robert Quinn, who was their number one sack artist last year, opposite DeMarcus Lawrence, who did not live up to his $100 million contract that he had just gotten going into last year. But they lost Robert Quinn because the Bears, I think, way overpaid for him. And there's no way Jerry Jones could even begin to compete with that kind of offer. So all of a sudden, there's a pretty gaping hole on the other side of the defensive line. So they went out and they got, obviously, Gerald McNeil and Dontari Poe, two very established, proven veterans that could anchor the middle of the line. They're much bigger players. They're more in the elephant range than anything Dallas had under Rod Marinelli. So they're saying, okay, we're going to anchor our defense against the run game. And both those guys can get to the passer on occasion. They're both up there in age, but they were both bargain basement steal of deals. And they're hoping DeMarcus Lawrence bounces back. And they said, okay, let's take a fairly low-risk money shot on an Aldon Smith for two reasons. And again, low-risk money because it's just $2 million base, which is not going to break the salary cap back of the Dallas Cowboys if he doesn't work out or if he doesn't contribute at all. So who am I betting on here? I'm betting on, number one, our man Jay Glazer and his assessment. And number two, Shannon, I'm betting on Jim Tom Sula, who was Aldon Smith's coach for his 4 years in San Francisco, his defensive line coach. And just recently, as you know, when they changed coaches, Mike McCarthy comes in, Mike Nolan is the defensive coordinator. They hired Jim Tom Sula to coach the Cowboy defensive line. And I'm pretty sure he had heavy input into this decision to bring back Aldon Smith, take a flyer on him, probably because Jim Tom Sula is vouching for his, just his football character, his heart, whatever. Jim probably knows this kid pretty to very well and said, I believe in his recovery. I believe he's been clean and sober for 9 months. And I believe there's still a lot left in that tank. So now to your point, Jerry Jones, as we know, Daddy Jerry, has always considered himself sort of the Father Flanagan of the National Football League. I can save the souls of these troubled players. And it started with, as you said, Charles Haley. I'll get to that in detail in just a moment. But as you recall, it's been Pac-Man Jones. It's been Tank Johnson. It's been Alonzo Spellman. It's been Greg Hardy. It's been Rolando McClain. It was Randy Gregory. Jerry took a second-round pick flyer on Randy Gregory, and he's had his moments, but he's now currently suspended and has filed for reinstatement. And I'm hoping Randy maybe has an even better chance of contributing than Aldon Smith does, because Randy Gregory, under the new CBA, I think Randy's issues were mostly marijuana. At least that's what I've been told. Don't know that for a fact. But if they're just marijuana, as you know, Shannon, the new CBA says you cannot be suspended for a positive marijuana test. Well, that was a big gain by the players. They lost in a lot of other ways, but they did win that one. So maybe the Cowboys will win because Randy Gregory will get reinstated, and maybe he can stay eligible under the new CBA if he continues to have marijuana, quote unquote, issues, or if he just wants to continue to smoke for whatever reason. So to me, if Jim Tom Sula has vouched and Jay Glazer has vouched, and real quick, Shannon, before I give the ball back to you, Jay Glazer was the co-founder of a program called MVPs. It's merging vets and players, and it's veteran, war veterans who have struggled with psychological, mental issues, have connected with pro football players having the same issues to try to figure out how to beat their demons together. So in that program, overseen by Jay Glazer, has been Aldon Smith. So Jay's got some particular insight into this situation. And Jay was so strong last night in his tweets, so adamant that Aldon Smith has found himself and at least is holding off his demons as we speak, that I'm saying, okay, worth a shot. And maybe it is a fairy tale storybook sort of turnaround story, because Aldon Smith then posted on Instagram a picture of him signing the deal and saying that he's blessed and thankful to be a Dallas Cowboy. So I'm going to say I'm barely good with this move, and I do think it might pay off a little bit, if not a lot. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Skip. The reason why they made this move is that they lost Robert Quinn, and they thought they could get Robert Quinn back on a similar deal in which they signed him the first year. They gave him probably about $8 million. But when Chicago came in and swooped in and gave him $70 million, about $30 million fully guaranteed, there was no way they were going to be able to compete with that. And plus, Chicago have Khalil Mack on the other side. They needed someone when Khalil Mack could get double teamed, he can beat one-on-one pressure, and Robert Quinn can still do that, especially on turf. Now, we saw his production suffer on grass when they moved to L.A., but as long as he's on that turf, he's a fast surface. Skip, you make some very good points, and I hope you're right. But Jerry is looking at this, Skip. There's really no downside because that $2 million they're talking about, it's not like that money is guaranteed. So there's a possibility he might not even make it, and so there's no harm, no foul. But as you mentioned, Jerry has this, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe, maybe Jerry is a very religious man, Skip, and we don't know anything about it. And maybe a part of him owning the Dallas Cowboys is to try to help wayward souls. And for me, Skip, I don't even know why you tested for marijuana. If you're not going to suspend the guy, it's kind of like speeding, Skip. If you're not going to write me a ticket for speeding, why the hell are you stopping me? Just let me go about my business and don't worry about pulling me side the road, tying up my time. I got somewhere to be. Well, if you're not going to suspend guys for marijuana violation, what the hell are you testing for it? Just let them go on about their business. As long as they show up on Sunday, that seemed to own the owners cared about anyway, Skip, is because their star players were missing games, and America said, man, weed's okay, it's just a plant. We'd rather them smoke marijuana than get hooked on pills and some of these other deadly drugs. So I get that side of it, Skip. But as you mentioned, if you look at all the guys that you mentioned, from Alonzo Spellman to Greg Hardy to Tank Johnson to Pac-Man Jones, and Jerry Jones, 30-plus years of owning this team, only one flyer. And if you want to say a flyer, because Charles Haley was a multiple-time All-Pro, a multiple-time Pro Bowl player, he had just run his course in San Francisco. He did not like the head coach, I forget his name, Skip, George Seifert. He and George Seifert, he said he believed that once George Seifert became the head coach, he changed because Seifert was his defensive coordinator, Skip, and he didn't have a problem. But the moment Seifert became a head coach, for whatever reason, he and Charles started bumping heads. And he had to go, Skip. You know some of the things, and it's never been reported publicly, but you know some of the things that Charles was doing. Once he got to Dallas, for whatever reason, he got in an environment that they had Dion and they had Mike and they had some of these other guys, and they embraced who he was, and he didn't give them any problems. But he's the only guy of all the flyers that Jerry has taken a chance on that's really panned out.
Okay, so thank you for bringing up Charles Haley, because I was there in Dallas covering the Cowboys when that deal went down. And in fact, I wound up writing a book that heavily involved that deal, because that's the one deal that I always gave general manager Jerry Jones full credit for making. Because as you remember, Shannon, Jimmy Johnson was the coach of the Cowboys then. Jimmy was anti-making that deal. And I did not blame Jimmy Johnson for being against it, because it was scary, because the 49ers, a conference rival, had completely given up on Charles Haley and said, way too high of risk for the reward that you do get from Charles Haley, who was obviously a very good and became a great player in Dallas. But Jerry Jones said, no, we can steal him from Carmen Policy, who was then the GM running the 49ers, and he is the missing link. He is the last piece to the puzzle for us to go win a Super Bowl, which they ended up doing a year before anybody thought they could after that 92 season. And it was Jerry pushing that deal through, forging it, and actually forcing Jimmy to take him on. And then to your point, they didn't have Dion yet. Obviously, they wouldn't get him until 95. But that locker room was strong enough with Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Darren Woodson, and others running the show in the locker room. And Emmett, Emmett wasn't the strongest leader. He was more of a follower. But But here came Charles, and just because he got out from under an ugly situation in San Francisco, and to your point, we can't even talk about the incidents. They're so ugly, they're not repeatable on television.
No,
and it had gotten to that point. And Charles, I think he'd be the first to tell you he had some psychological issues going on. I'm not sure exactly how they were diagnosed, but he had issues.
Yeah.
And Charles,
he's spoken.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Skip, he's spoken about some of the things that he didn't get the proper diagnosis and he probably needed medication and he's since gotten on. Yeah. But 49ers had nobody in that locker room from a player standpoint that knew how to deal with Charles. So you look at what they had in their locker room, Skip. They Steve, I think Joe was still there at the time, but Joe and Steve and Jerry, those guys couldn't handle him. You had to have a dominant personality. You had to go, because if you had to fight Charles, you had to fight him. Because he was going to test you, Skip. Charles Haley, I know him, been in the Hall of Fame, been around him a lot, Skip. He will test you. And if you let him break down your barriers, he will run over you every single day. The Cowboys had guys in their locker room that when they put their barrier up and say, Charles, do not cross this barrier, he knew they meant business and he wouldn't cross it. The 49ers had nobody in there. Yeah. So the old saying, he crossing the Rubicon, you going too far, he would go too far in the 49ers, and there was no one that would push back against him.
Okay. Remember, Ronnie Lott was like his big brother figure early on in San Francisco. Then Ronnie was gone, and Charles was gone psychologically. So here he comes to Dallas, and he was absolutely the catalyst. They could not have won the Super Bowls. They won 2 in a row without Charles Haley. And then not only did Jimmy then obviously fall out with Jerry, and Jerry fired Jimmy, but Charles fell in love playing with Barry Switzer, and he would have run through the locker room wall for Barry Switzer. So Dallas benefited hugely from a deal that Jerry did push through. And in the end, Charles Haley wasn't just a good player. He was an all-time great player. I campaigned for him to be in the Hall of Fame, even though, to your point, Shannon, he pushed me constantly. I did a radio show in Dallas. He would call into my radio show and just ridicule me and insult me personally. And yet I became such a fan of his as a player that the personal didn't matter to me, because you're right. All of this psychological baggage was left behind at the locker room door on Sunday because this man would play football. And I've often said that just watching TV, watching the Cowboys, he was unblockable. I would watch 2 players attempt, sometimes 3, attempt to control him. He was too quick, too strong, too savvy, too nasty. He was one of the all-time great pass rushers, maybe right there with Lawrence Taylor coming off the edge as a disruptor. So the point was, Charles Haley didn't take 4 years off. He took no years off. He took no time off because the Cowboys got him late in training camp, straight from the 49er training camp, and here they went. So that was one situation. This is quite different because 4 years is 4 years. In fact, I just can't remember anybody taking 4 years off from a sport and coming back and being any good. And the closest thing we've seen is the Tim Tebow baseball experiment, where he went from junior year of high school to age 30 before he tried to play baseball, and then he tried to do it at the pro level, and he's hanging in there and hanging on, but it's hard, and it takes time, and yet I think Jim Tomsula is saying, hey, the fire can burn in this kid, now 30, almost going on 31 years of age, but I think Tomsula is saying, we can salvage whatever's left in him, and that he is definitely worth the shot. Because, Shannon, as you recall, coming out, we're talking about 6'5", 265, ran 4.7 at the combine, and he had it all. He's got Charles Haley. In fact, he wears number 99. Haley wore 94. But he reminds me a little of Charles Haley in the way he leans in off the edge and just becomes unblockable.
Skip, you took the words right out of my mouth, because they listed Charles as an elephant position. That was what his position was. And Aldon Smith, that long, angular body before, obviously Charles has gotten up in the age, he's a little heavier now, but that's who he reminds you of. Yeah. He can bend the edge. He has more power than you think because you think he's going to bend the edge on you and he bulls over the top of you. Skip, I hope he can have just a resemblance because the likelihood of him coming back being that dominant, 33 and a half sacks, in his second year, he had 19 and a half sacks. So that goes to show you just how dominant of a player he was. Skip, if he can come back and get a resemblance of that, it helps the Cowboys, and hopefully it can keep him on the straight and narrow because it's kind of hard, Skip. It's like once you get, and I think they fought really hard, that when these guys were getting suspended, you're taking the thing away from them, which is the team, which is what they consider family, and you're isolating them. So hopefully he can get back with the Cowboys, get around some players, get around some teammates, friends, and he can stay on that straight pass, and he can continue to build his career. But Skip, it's going to be, Skip, 4 years, his last game was 2015. Skip, that's a long, long time.
And as I open this topic talking about, it's a long, long list of issues, legal issues. And Shannon, I'll be the first to admit, the ones that concern me the most are the domestic violence issues, and he had several of them. Then he ended up having a fight with Colin Kaepernick that erupted into a practice field fight over a woman. Then there was an issue at the woman's house involving Colin Kaepernick and his car, vandalism. It was a mess. His whole life has been a mess. But Shannon, from all that I hear, the biggest problem has been alcohol. You could be right about other drug use, but alcohol has been the number one demon from start to finish. And again, I'm going back and I'm trusting our man Jay Glazer, as I always do. And he's saying clean and sober for 9 months. Well, that's certainly a start. That doesn't mean he can't fall off the wagon today or tomorrow. But I have a good feeling because Jay has a great feeling about this. So I've got 2 shots, but both require reinstatement. I've got Randy Gregory. And by the way, quick point on Randy Gregory. Shannon, I was around Aldon Smith twice. This was on First Take at ESPN. He came on the show twice, and he was a troubled young man. And you could just tell being around Aldon Smith that he was having big issues. In fact, one time on the air, I thought Aldon Smith was going to punch me over something I said to him that I didn't think was all that controversial or negative. He had a quick trigger, quick temper, and he was scary to be around. From all I've heard about Randy Gregory, he's just the opposite. He has a big, good heart. He's had a marijuana problem. My friend Herman Edwards was like a mentor to Randy Gregory and willingly said, I'll try to take over for him and help him get back on the straight and narrow, and became like a big brother, a guiding light to Randy Gregory. And Herm used to tell me he's such a great kid. Well, I'm not sure anybody ever said Aldon Smith was such a great kid, but Randy Gregory has more potential probably right now to bounce back and be productive for a longer period of time, maybe than Aldon Smith does. But Aldon Smith, if he has beaten the alcohol demon and at least can stiff arm it, can keep it at bay, then I think he still has a chance to contribute as a pass rusher, maybe even just in rotation. And maybe if you see some glimpses of the old Aldon Smith, maybe it'll be worth the shot. So now we got 2 players. Isn't this vintage Dallas Cowboys? We got 2 players that are big X factors, but heavily depended on, and neither has even been reinstated by Roger Goodell. And it's going to come down to Roger saying, okay, I buy into Aldon Smith, and okay, I buy into Randy Gregory. Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I can't even jump to the conclusion they're even going to be on the team next year until Commissioner says yes.
Reinstatement.
Your thoughts?
Right. Skip, what if Commissioner called Jerry and said, Jerry, you remember that time that you were trying to oust me as Commissioner of the NFL? You remember that time you tried to sue me? I think I'm going to hold off a little while long on these reinstatements to send you a message don't mess with this. Because, Skip, you remember that Sports Illustrated, they called Commissioner Goodell the sheriff. There's a new, was it Time Magazine? Or, I think it might have been Time Magazine, Skip. They said there's a new sheriff in town. It's like, maybe I need to remind you just who I am. He was voted the most powerful sports figure in the world. But he's not like that, Skip. I know Commissioner very well. He's not like that. But as you mentioned, everything is going to come down to whether he puts his name on that reinstatement papers. Roger Goodell signs off on Randy Gregory and Aldon Smith. Okay, they're eligible to play in the 2020 season. Everything is predicated on his stamp of approval.
Okay, last point on this is Greg Hardy. I was on the other show that I mentioned on ESPN when that came down, when Jerry took a flyer on Greg Hardy. But it was so different then, Shannon, because Greg Hardy had been convicted by a judge in North Carolina of violence against his ex-girlfriend. And if you remember the charges, it was graphic. And I said no to Greg Hardy. In fact, I said on television, Jerry, I'm ashamed of you, and now you're making me ashamed of my Dallas Cowboys that you're giving this man a chance to play football again after that happened. And the only reason that he was suspended for only 4 games was because, as you know, in North Carolina, you can, if you lose the bench trial, then you can seek a jury trial, which he did. And the victim, according to prosecutors, did not show up for the jury trial of Greg Hardy because, according to the prosecutors, the victim had accepted a settlement from Greg Hardy, and the prosecutors said there's nothing else we can do. So that's how he got off a conviction in the bench trial. And remember, he did play then, he missed 4. He played 12 games that year. And he had 35 tackles and 6 sacks. It wasn't bad. But you know what, Shannon? That wasn't worth it. I'm going to hope that it's been long enough for Aldon Smith that he has redeemed himself, that he has recovered from the alcohol that fueled his rage against women. And I'm going to be barely okay with this right here, right now. So I'm going to say thumbs kind of up. I'm going to go thumb barely up on this deal. And I think you're giving me a thumb sideways, maybe, right? You're kind of neutral on it. I don't hear you condemning the deal, right?
Well, Skip, I just hope the young man, like I said, I just hope the young man can battle these demons every single day, Skip, because we know once these demons get a hold of you, sobriety is a step-by-step, a day-by-day process. You can't look for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month in advance. You got to go day by day. You're going to have to go by places that sell alcohol every single day and see the open sign up, on, and drive right past it. And so hopefully, I just wanted the kid to get a second chance. I believe he deserves a second chance, and hopefully he can cash in and make good of it.
I can't tell you how much I second that emotion, and take it from a guy who was in Dallas for whatever it was, 17 years. Dallas can be Sin City for Dallas Cowboys because everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to buy you a drink or get you whatever recreational drug of choice that you want. So it can be a very dangerous place because the Cowboys are so idolized in Dallas, Texas. But I'm pulling for him, and I'm pulling for Randy Gregory. And obviously, I continue to pull for my Dallas Cowboys. And barely, I say, way to go, Jerry Jones.
No mercy.
Welcome back to Undisputed. Man, did I ever enjoy talking about my Dallas Cowboys and our opening segment of the show, even though Aldon Smith is such a controversial figure. But now let's take it up a notch. Let's talk about an even more controversial figure. Yesterday in Miami, we saw Lamar Jackson, reigning MVP, working out, throwing passes to his teammate, Hollywood Brown, who's from, obviously, Hollywood, Florida. But what detonated the internet buzz was Lamar was also throwing to another guy in that workout who happens to be the cousin of Hollywood, and that man's name is Antonio Brown. And Lamar went so far as to post a picture in which he was hugging both Hollywood and Antonio, and then lots of video of him throwing balls to Antonio Brown. So I ask you, Shannon Sharpe, what message was Lamar trying to send by posting those pictures and videos?
Well, the message that I got is that he's not practicing social distancing. Let's start with that one. And Skip, I didn't take too much out of it, Skip, because you're talking about all these guys from Florida. Like you mentioned, Hollywood and Antonio are cousins, and he's probably, Lamar probably reached out to Hollywood and says, hey, bro, let's go throw. He's like, hey, man, you mind if Cuz tag along Antonio? Sure, no problem throwing the ball. Skip, let me tell you something about Baltimore. Now, I know Baltimore, there's two places I know better than any other two places in all the NFL. The Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens culture, I like to think I had something to do with that. Because when I arrived in 2000, I made it about us. It's about team. It's about winning. You can get your individual goals, but nobody cares if we're not winning. So I like to think I had a little something to do with the culture that you see that thrives and flourishes in Baltimore. Antonio Brown is not a fit for there. You know why, Skip? Because he complains about getting 10, 13, 14 targets. Hell, there are some games Baltimore only throws the ball 14 times. Are they going to throw them all to him? Skip, he would lose his mind in a run first, run second offense when it's not about him. And the last thing you need is Lamar Jackson trying to worry about force feeding a guy. Skip, those guys, Snead and Hollywood Brown and some of those other guys, David Andrews, they know the likelihood of them going out there having 10 catches, 13, 14 catches are slim to none because that's not their offense. And you would bring Antonio Brown into that, Skip, everybody always talks about, man, I just want to win. I want to win. But Skip, we all know if you play wide receiver, you want to win by catching 10 for $150 and 2 touchdowns. And that doesn't happen very often in that offense. Now, do I believe Antonio Brown deserves a second chance? Sure. But it's going to have to be go somewhere, Skip, where you have a coach that's established, a quarterback that's established, that can tell him shut the F up when he starts complaining about not getting touches. That's the only way it's going to work. If you don't have a coach that's on stable footing and you don't have a quarterback that's established, he'll run amok.
I hear you, but I want to start with the first point that you made right out of the box. The first thing that caught my eye was the photo that Lamar posted. I think he actually retweeted it from Hollywood. But to your point, Shannon, in this day and age that we're all living in, barely, it was such a bad look and such a tone-deaf choice to post a picture of Lamar with his arms draped around the two cousins, obviously Hollywood, Antonio. And I don't know about what your household is like, Shannon, but I can tell you what mine is with my wife, Ernestine. She's out of her mind, and I'm getting out of my mind. You just run rampant with paranoia because it feels like you can't set foot outside your home without risking maybe your life. We're in a pandemic, and I realized Florida was one state in which the governor for a long time did not issue a stay-at-home order until just recently,
right.
And now it starts at midnight tonight in Florida. They do finally have a stay-at-home order. But we've had one for whatever it's been 2 weeks here in Los Angeles, as you know, Shannon, and it's serious, serious business. Social distancing,
Correct.
even at the grocery store, constantly washing hands, Purelling hands, trying to stay away from people, and still reading horror stories about people getting it who tried to follow the rules. So you start to worry, does it float in the air? Can any of us sort of save ourselves from this virus? And there's a picture on social media of 3 good to great NFL players. They're all potentially great, obviously. And they are completely ignoring the moment that we're all stuck in right now. And at some moments during the day, you feel like the world is going to end. And obviously,
Skip.
Those 3 pro football players need to look no farther than Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant and Sean Payton. They are not immune. They are not invincible. And I just don't like the message that they're sending with the picture first and foremost before we get to the video. Your thoughts?
Skip, and that's my point, Skip, is that athletes, Skip, we don't think anything. If I guarantee you, it had before Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and some of these other NBA players got it, I guarantee you, if you would have polled every player, what do you think your chances or the likelihood of you contracting this virus is? I guarantee you, all of them would have said probably less than 5%. Most of them would have said 0. Skip, let me tell you the truth. Man, my homeboy coughed on the phone. I hung up on him. I don't know how contagious this thing is. So you call for sneeze on the phone, click, I'm hanging up. The guy ain't taking no chances. Don't get around me hooking and hawking and all that kind of stuff. No, man, hey, man, people, you know what, Skip? I think the thing was is that, oh, it's just the flu. You get the flu. But what we're finding out, Skip, that this thing is 3 times more deadly than the flu. And there's a vaccination for the flu. There are no vaccination for this. And it's quick. It's sudden. And, well, young people can't get it. Now, all of a sudden, young people are dying from it. So you better give this thing the seriousness that it deserves before it's too late. But, Skip, like I said, I was in that locker room from 2000 to 2001. And I like to think I had something to do with the culture and how they interact with one another. It's about the team, Skip. They had great players. But as I explained to Ray when I first got there, yes, you can be great. But you'll go unknown, you'll go unnoticed if you don't win.
Yep, well said. Okay, back to the football part of this equation, the less meaningful part of this equation, the now almost irrelevant part of this equation. According to those who cover today's Ravens, the Ravens are not interested in Antonio Brown because the Ravens are already committed to building through the draft as they did with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown last year out of the University of Oklahoma in the first round. And as you know, Shannon, this draft is loaded with receivers.
Loaded.
It is thick with receivers. First round, second round, third round. You can score a receiver somewhere in the first 3 rounds, and I'm sure they have targeted their man already in Baltimore. So I think they would rather go that direction because now we're back to, this has been the ongoing theme of this show, reinstatement. I don't know if Randy Gregory will be reinstated. I certainly don't know if Aldon Smith will be. And I definitely don't know whether Antonio Brown will be reinstated if or when. Because Antonio's recent problems off the field, his issues, legal issues, are so deep and so dark in so many ways that it's hard for me to believe. Obviously, he missed most of last season already, but I'm not sure he's going to be reinstated for next year. I'm just not sure of it, so it may be a moot point. So that brings me to Lamar. I love Lamar, and his team loves him, and he is a player's quarterback where everybody in the locker room loves him. He's not aloof. He's not distant. He's one of the fellas. So to your point, when Marquise Brown, Hollywood, said, hey, can I bring Cuz with me, Antonio? Well, Lamar's going to say sure because they all have Miami connections and they all feel like they're Miami brothers. And I think Lamar wanted to post the picture and post the video just to help campaign for Antonio to get back into the NFL, to at least get somebody to open their eyes and say, okay, I'll risk giving him a chance. Because I think Lamar was just trying to bless him, saying, hey, I still believe in him. I want to show you how much I believe in him as a player because, Shannon, was I surprised what I saw in the video? Listen, Antonio isn't good. He's great. He might be all-time great. And when I was watching him run the routes, the digs, the out routes, the deep routes, it's just sensational quickness and burst. And it's still there. And we saw it briefly catching passes from Tom Brady in Miami last year when they won 43-0. He caught whatever it was, 4 balls for 85 yards and a big touchdown. But that was his one and only game for the Patriots. And he blew up that situation and burned that bridge. And he's burned a lot of bridges. He burned his bridge in Oakland during the Hard Knocks filming, obviously. And I just don't know what future he has, near future in the NFL. But I still I admire Lamar because I don't think he was campaigning for Antonio to be a Raven as much as he was just trying to say, hey, remember he's here and he's still a decent guy in my eyes. And I still like hanging with him and I love throwing passes to him. So I think Lamar was just trying to do a solid for cuz Antonio just to say, hey, NFL, I'm throwing to him and he looks really good. And I'm okay with that message from Lamar.
Skip, I don't have a problem with that if the circumstances and the timing was different. If this is a normal time, got no problem. Hang out, have lunch with him, show y'all working out together, having lunch together, doing all that other stuff. Talking football, I got no problem with that. But Skip, this is not a normal situation. Lamar's going to have to use better judgment. Skip, remember he was in his car driving with his Cuban chain, and I think he posted how fast he was going. Lamar, you are a face of a franchise. You're going to have to use better judgment, bruh. This is what is expected. To whom much is given, much is required. You don't get the luxury now. And I know people go, oh, Lamar, do your thing. No, bro. That's not how it works. Don't you let these knuckleheads out here convince you that what you're doing is okay. Be smart. I understand that you got no problem with Antonio. I don't have a problem with Antonio. But in this situation, it just comes off, as Skip said, you said, Skip, tone deaf, that you're oblivious to what's going on. And that's all that's on every channel other than sports channel and even on sports, because there is no sports currently. So that should give you context to just how serious, Skip, they don't cancel sporting events for the flu. That should tell you how serious the seriousness of this virus. When have you ever known them to cancel something for the flu? I get people get the flu and I get people die with the flu, but we haven't seen anything like this, Skip. You have to go back to maybe the smallpox or when they had the outbreaks of the influenza way back when that wiped out so many people, or the bubonic plague. Skip, this 2020. This is not the late 1800s, early 1900s. This is 21st century.
I am so with you on that. And yet, big picture, Lamar Jackson, to your point about how he carries himself and needs to carry himself, he had a season for the ages last year. He was a runaway MVP. He threw 36 touchdown passes. I've never seen anything like it. The guy who can't throw, the guy who some people said belongs at wide receiver, dominated this league as a thrower as well as a runner. And Baltimore, to me, over the second half of the regular season, was easily the best team in pro football. So the point here is, and obviously then the starters didn't play much for 3 weeks, and it was obviously rust over rest when they ran into the hot Titans, and they lost. They got knocked out, and I'm sure that's going to stick with Lamar for the rest of his life, just the way that Jacksonville loss sticks with Shannon Sharpe for the rest of his life when they lost a playoff game at home to Mark Brunell and the Jaguars. So this one will stick with Lamar, but the point is that they were still the best team, and they knew it. And I think they're thinking, to your point, Shannon, we don't really need to throw Antonio into our mix because it was already a really good mix to start with. So we'll take the rookie receiver if we can get one of the studs up fairly high, and we'll do that instead of upsetting our apple cart in the locker room of unity, togetherness, and our bond with Antonio demanding more and more targets, obviously. So I get that. They don't need him. Again, I pushed the other day. I thought Tom Brady and Antonio, they bonded for that, couple of weeks they were together in New England. And so I was a little surprised that Bruce Arians wouldn't let Tampa take a shot on Antonio because they were a 7-9 team last year. And as many weapons as they have, and as much as I think Tom Brady's going to turn them around, I think they could use Antonio in the slot. But even Bruce Arians, who coached Antonio for 2 years, first 2 years in Pittsburgh, said, no, he's not a fit in our locker room. And to your point, I'm pretty sure the Ravens are saying he's definitely not a fit in our locker room.
Skip, if you remember, Skip, they just traded Hayden Hurst, who was a tight end, because he said, man, I need more passes. He said, I can't do my thing here. Y'all got David Andrews. First of all, it's not like you're throwing the ball 35, 40 times a game. And then you got David Andrews. Yeah. So I need an opportunity to showcase what I can do. They traded him to Atlanta. So you bringing a guy that's used to getting 12, 13, 14 targets, this is why you go the route of the draft, Skip. They guys don't know any better. Oh, this is our offense. 5 targets? Okay, I'm cool. You get a guy that's used to catching 12, 13, 14 balls, or getting that many targets, and all of a sudden you get 2 to 3. Oh man, you invited something into your home that didn't even need to be there.
Well said.
No mercy.
The Athletic has chosen the best players ever to wear every NBA number from 00 all the way up to 99. And guess who was chosen to represent number 23? Not LeBron James. And for that matter, LeBron wasn't even chosen to be the best player ever to wear number 6. That, of course, went to Bill Russell, the great Bill Russell. So, Shannon Sharpe, or should I call you Shannon Sharpe? How big a problem do you have of Michael Jordan being chosen over LeBron James to represent the number 23?
I don't care nothing about no number. We know what time it is. One guy's about to have 13 first-team All-NBA. The other guy had 10. We have not seen a player enjoy this level of greatness for this extended period of time in NBA history. And I was watching a game because last night it was on another network, games 5 and 6, game 5 and 7. I was like, he did that. Skip, did you know he's the only player in finals history to lead everyone in every statistical category, points, rebound, assists, steals, and blocks? Skip, that's never been done. Game 7, a triple dub, most triple dubs in final history. Skip, stop this. Yeah, okay, fine. We get numbers. What it seems to me, whoever had the number first got the credit. So, okay, yeah, he had the number first, so what? It's no big deal. We ain't crying about all that. But you know what time it is, Skip. You keep hanging, but he's 6-0 with 6 this and the walk-off. I get all that. But that ain't changing my view. LeBron James is the greatest basketball player to ever dribble a basketball and play in the 70-plus year history of the NBA. That's facts.
That is phony facts because, yeah, I know what time it is. It's about 11 o'clock Eastern time, and Michael Jordan is still and always will be the GOAT. And you are having a terrible week, and you will not give it up, even though you should, because you're sounding more and more delusional, because this week, Michael Jeffrey Jordan was even voted in an ESPN fan poll the greatest college player ever. And now on top of that, The Athletic says, well, undoubtedly, the player who should represent number 23 in NBA history is Michael Jordan. Obviously the original 23, but he's the GOAT. And you've got to give this up because in the end, Shannon, it's laughable for you to even try to make this case. It's laughable for LeBron. In fact, I saw a clip on ESPN this morning of LeBron talking about, what was it on, More Than an Athlete that he was doing with Maverick Carter. And he was saying, the night that we came back from 3-1 down and won Game 7, that's when it hit me. This makes me the greatest player ever. No, it doesn't. What are you talking about? Makes you the greatest player ever? I mean, okay, the reason he's got all those numbers is he's played forever. What's he up to, like 22 years now? And he played in 8 straight finals because he was able to dominate the Eastern Conference. So he played in the finals. He poured numbers into the stat sheets of the finals. He stuffed the stat sheets of finals because he got to play in so many of them. But he's 3-6 in those finals. He did a reverse Tom Brady. Tom's 6-3 in Super Bowls. He's 3-6. And he's lucky because Ray Allen saved his legacy with the greatest clutch shot I've ever seen, or they would have lost that one to my Spurs. And what LeBron should be known more for are his epic failures, his meltdowns. in Boston, that last series, his first go-round in Cleveland, when the owner, Dan Snyder, even accused him of quitting against the Celtics as he just folded in games 4, 5, and 6. And then his first go-round with the Heat, first finals with the Heat. That was the all-time superstar meltdown I have ever seen. And then in 2013, Game 6, he had an epic meltdown in the last 3 minutes of that game and missed, or LeBricked, I should say, the tying 3, and Ray Allen canceled it and saved him with the clutchest shot I've ever seen. And then 2014, he had an epic failure in games 3 and 4 in Miami as they blew that series to my Spurs. It was 1-1 going home to Miami. Then 2014, go look, it's just one after the other. That was when they got blown off the floor by a record margin by my Spurs. And then how about that game 1 at Oracle a couple of years ago when he just melted down after overtime and quit on his team? I don't know. Jordan didn't ever have one of those, and that's all I can remember from LeBron James.
Can I ask you a question? When Jordan couldn't get out the first round, what number was he wearing? He had to be wearing another number, right? Because, see, what you do is that you hold final losses against LeBron, but you never hold Michael Jordan not getting out of the first round. Now, you keep saying that he went up against historical great Big Three Celtics. Was the Warriors in 17 and 18, were they not historically great? So so you mean to tell me Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and Kawhi, 4 Hall of Famers, he couldn't beat them, so he's terrible. He loses when they got Rondo, they got Kevin Garnett, they got Ray Allen, they got Paul Pierce. He couldn't beat them, so he's a failure. Michael Jordan couldn't beat the Big Three Celtics. He couldn't for the longest until they started dismantling. See, people are like, well, they went over the hill. When you keep going, making these deep playoff runs like the Pistons did, year after year, eventually, yeah, you're going to track them down. That's what happened to Golden State. 5 straight finals. And the wheels came off, literally and figuratively, because Klay Thompson blew out his knee, KD tore his Achilles, and we all know what happened. Toronto won the series. Skip, 8 straight finals. He did that. 8 straight. But you don't hold first-round bowouts, losing in the conference finals against Michael Jordan, like you hold finals losses against LeBron. Why?
Okay, let's just do this then. Let's go back to the shot heard round the world against Orlando in his first go-round in Cleveland, and they go up 2 games to 1, and everybody's telling me, boy, you're going to have to eat crow on this one. No, I don't think I'm going to have to eat crow. And what happened in games 4, 5, and 6? They didn't go up 2-1, Skip. They didn't go up 2. No, Skip. They didn't go up 2-1. They were already down 0-1 because Orlando had beaten them game 1. That was the game 2 shot. No. Orlando beat them twice in Orlando. He came back, won in Cleveland, and then they beat them again in Orlando. They lost 4-2. They weren't up no 2-1 against Orlando. Okay, but after he hit the shot heard round the world, they still lost in 6 games. They didn't even get it to game 7.
Okay.
He's the GOAT. He's on his... Okay, don't give me that. That's a failure. That's an epic fail on LeBron's part because it was just a collection of shooters around Dwight Howard. You're better than those guys. You're still the best player on the court, and you lose in 6 games after you hit the shot heard round the world. And then against the Celtics next year, if you're that guy... Come on, you got to be, you can't just quit, as Dan Gilbert said. And then I had to hear the story from the inner circle. Oh, LeBron had to be sedated in games 4, 5, and 6 against Boston. Stop it. And then, of course, he takes his talent to South Beach and he joins forces with Dwayne and Chris Bosh. He wasn't by himself. And in the finals, he won against the Baby Thunder. Did he not get huge help from Shane Battier hitting threes and Mario Chalmers going crazy? And then Mike Miller hitting 7 threes in that closeout game 5 in Miami? I mean, come on. What are we talking about here?
You see?
He needed a lot of help. Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. Okay, so what?
So what? A top 50 player. So what? Dennis Rodman, a top 50
Michael
player.
made him
so
a top
what?
50.
Really? I know he did. Skip, hold on. That man was a made man before he set foot. He had 2 championships and 2 defensive players of the year, and he led the league in rebounding for 6 or 7 straight years. He was a made man before he even saw Michael Jordan. He used to put paint on Michael Jordan's head. But you see what you did? If LeBron is the guy, he's got to beat the Celtics. Well, if Jordan is the guy, he's got to beat the big three Celtics. Why not? Why do you hold? I'm just trying to figure out, why do people hold LeBron to a higher standard than they hold Michael? If Michael is the GOAT, beat the big three Celtics. Beat the bad boy Pistons before they start dismantling them, before they got old. They were the bad boy Pistons in the 80s. What happened in the 80s, Skip?
Yeah, but wait a second. Once he broke through, Shannon, he went 6-0 in the finals with 6 MVPs. Not only did he win a college championship with a last-second shot, he won his final championship in Chicago in a game I covered in Salt Lake City by holding the pose on his last-second shot that beat the Utah Jazz, Karl Malone and John Stockton, after he stole the ball from Malone in the corner. Well, what do you mean stop saying it? It's just a fact. You can't stand facts.
First of all, in Carolina, that was not a last-second shot. There was 15 seconds still on the clock. Because you will not, when LeBron hit shots like that, you won't give him that. Oh, there was still time, yada, yada, yada. Now he hits a shot, and if Brady Brown does not throw the ball to James Worthy, who knows? But I'm not going to get into that, Skip. He did that, that's over. All I'm asking you is that why couldn't he beat the big three Celtics, and why couldn't he beat the bad boy Pistons in the 80s? But he got in the league. Scottie Pippen, if I'm not mistaken, got there in 87. So 87, 88, 89, 90. Why couldn't he do it?
Because who was your favorite player when you were a kid, when you were in high school? Larry Joe Bird.
That don't matter. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, okay. It doesn't matter now. But it should have mattered then. No. Hey, Larry Bird was a bad boy. He was a bad boy. And he had Robert Parrish, and he had Kevin McHale, and he had Dennis Johnson, and he had Danny Ainge, and I could go on. That was an all-time great basketball team, and they referred to Michael Jordan as Jesus in sneakers. It took all of their collective greatness to overcome him. It took all of the collective greatness of the bad boy Pistons, and that team went about 10 deep. And they were bad boys, as their nickname indicates, because they played football, basketball. And Sam Smith of the Chicago Tribune ended up writing a book called The Jordan Rules, a bestseller, about how they had to come up with a complete set of rules. This is how all 5 of us have to contain that guy. And that's how they kept overcoming him barely. And they went on to the finals and won 2 of those 3 finals because they were an all-time great team. But once Michael broke through, 6-0, 6 MVPs. You can't argue with that. It's game over.
Well, how about this here? I'm going to get me a ghostwriter, and I'm going to write a book of how teams loaded up to beat GOAT James. Mainly the Warriors, mainly the Clippers, because we had never seen anything like this before. So, yeah, I'm going to get me a ghostwriter, and we're going to write a book how the NBA loaded up, teams loaded up to take down GOAT James. That's going to be my book. Since all you want to do is refer back to the Jordan rules. All I'm asking you, don't wave your hand. All I'm asking you is that if Michael Jordan, Skip, you do realize he was going to the playoffs sub 500, getting swept. He never got out of the first round until he got Scottie Pippen, and then you just poo-poo Scottie Pippen like he just a guy.
I got to get back to the book you want to write, and I'll help you write that book, and we're going to call it the LeBron Rules, and we're going to quote Coach Popovich about the LeBron rules when Spurs had all their epic matches against LeBron and company, because the Popovich rules to the Spurs were this: get off him. Don't cover him. Make him shoot threes. Dare him to shoot threes. Dare him. He can't make them. He's not a good three-point shooter. Just let him shoot that. We don't want him to drive the ball because he's the greatest driver of the basketball ever, but he's afraid to go to the free throw line, so he wants to keep shooting threes. And Pop was right. Lay off him. Game 6 down the stretch, he airballed a 3, then he LeBricked a 3 off the back rim to tie with like 5 seconds left, and you know the rest of the story.
He hit several.
Ray Allen.
He hit several. Okay, and what about, I forgot this other team, the Big 3 Celtics, the newer version 2.0. Why you think they put that team together? Hey, Kevin Garnett didn't get drafted by the Celtics. Ray Allen didn't get drafted by the Celtics. James Posey didn't get drafted by the Celtics. They geared up to take down GOAT James. The same thing with the Warriors. The same thing the Clippers are doing. So the LeBron rules. Anybody out there that's an author, want to write a bestseller, come holler at your boy. We put this thing together.
Please.
GOAT James
holler
rules.
at Shannon, please. Yeah, holler at him. Because we need the chapter about how Draymond got suspended in Game 4 of the, 2016 finals, which flipped that finals on its ear because Golden State was up, obviously, 3-1, and all of a sudden, Draymond dared to yell at LeBron, "You B-word." And Kiki Vandeweghe, the director of, suspensions for the league, is sitting courtside and says, "You can't do that. We could hear that on national TV." He called him the B-word. And then he goes down and kicks LeBron in the midsection. It was the ultimate double jeopardy insult, and it got the glue of the Golden State Warriors suspended for Game 5, which they lost. They lost momentum. Kyrie started taking over games. LeBron was very good, but Kyrie made the shot of shots to win Game 7. As Steph Curry just shrank and disappeared.
Whoa, time out. You keep on talking about glue. What was it, Elmer's glue? Because you know that thing couldn't stick. Okay, he was suspended for Game 5. Okay, what happened in Game 6? Was there Draymond not there? Now, you remind you, Skip, they got the unanimous MVP. No, ain't no lost no momentum. We don't do that. Hold on. Now, you just told me when LeBron hit the shot, they got the momentum, they should have rolled off and won the series. Now you talking about they lost momentum because they lost. Man, you need to stop.
No. What story do you love to tell the most? Draymond went crying into the parking lot the night of Game 7 and called Kevin Durant and said, "Please come save us." That's how tough-minded, how gutsy that Golden State team was. Stop it. Give me a break.
What? Well, so, hold on. So when did they ever do that? So when has somebody ever done that? When has somebody ever cried that says, "Okay, I need you to come join me so we can beat Jordan"? They didn't do that. They didn't do that. The bad boy Pistons said, "We got this under control. We got this under control," until they started expanding the league, and then Rick Mahorn left. Isaiah had gotten old. Skip, you do realize Isaiah came in after the 81, and all those finals appearances that he was going to, even though they didn't win, those deep playoff runs, busted up the Bulls, and then finally, Larry, Robert, and McHale got old. DJ got old. All the Celtics got old. The Sixers had already gotten old because Dr. J, Moses Malone had moved on, yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden, but he took time off. I wish LeBron had won those 2 finals, took a couple of years off, come back, win a couple of more, because then we judge him differently. Because, Michael would have done this. We don't know what Michael would have done. All we know is that he took time off and he didn't. And there was 3 years in which he did not go to the NBA Finals. LeBron James 8 straight. 8 straight.
No mercy.
We will get back to talking about my Cowboys signing Aldon Smith here in just a few minutes on Undisputed. But right now, let's get back to talking about Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Still doesn't sound quite right, but I still love it. Shannon Sharpe, an NFL executive, has told The Athletic, and I'm going to quote, "People who want to judge Tom Brady based upon the results they got last year in New England are way off base." That means you, Shannon Sharpe. Would you please defend yourself?
Let that sink in. For the people at home that's watching this, let this sink in. For the first time in history, we're not supposed to judge an athlete on what we previously saw. We're supposed to go back to his best years, the greatest deeds that he's ever done, and judge him off that. Where? When have we ever done that? And I told you, Skip, that's the problem that I have with so many people. They want to, 42-year-old quarterback, had arguably one of his worst seasons ever. Don't judge him on that. Judge him on the years that he won the Super Bowl. Judge him on other things. Don't judge him on that season. Well, damn, are we going to do, so is that the treatment that we're giving athletes moving forward? So if they have a bad year, we're not going to judge them on that bad year because Cam Newton is out of a job. Phillip Rivers is out of a job. There are a lot of guys that's out of jobs because they had a bad last year, but we're not to judge them on that. Tom Brady is the only one that people will continuously make excuses for on why he performed bad. It was the receivers. It was the offensive line. It was his running game. But none of those guys got credit when he was wheeling and dealing. Why now? When things are going good, oh, Tom Brady is 40 years old and he won the Super Bowl. Ain't mentioned nothing about the running game. Ain't mentioned nothing about the receivers. Ain't mentioned nothing about the O-line. Now at 42, he struggles. Well, it wasn't his fault. Man, y'all need to stop this, Skip. I've never seen anything like it. In all my years of playing, in all my years, they didn't make these, oh, we can't judge Joe Montana on last year. Why not? Because that's what we have to go on. You only as good as the last thing you put on tape. That's what we judge. That's why they film practice. Guess what? There is a guy that everybody says that's a GOAT of coaches that's up for an Emmy. And he said, from what I've seen in practice and what I've seen in game day, I'm only willing to go year to year, but not nearly at the price that other teams were willing to go. I'm going to take Coach Belichick over this anonymous exec.
Good for you. And we now have a bet that I say Tampa Bay will have a better record than New England next year. I forget we bet like 10 cases on that. And I will be right about this because three cases, whatever it was, you name it, 3, 4, 33, I don't care. The point is, Bill Belichick is, I think, going to go forward with Jared Stidham as his quarterback. And Tom Brady now has 4 weapons, better than any single weapon he had last year. And he has 2 offensive coaches who, as much as I respect Josh McDaniels, are much better than Josh McDaniels ever thought about being. And the point is that the executive is saying people who want to judge Tom based upon the results they got in New England last year are off base, because he goes on to say virtually all of his physical skills are still there. He compares Tom going to Tampa to Peyton, as you know, going to Denver. Peyton was coming off serious neck surgery, spinal surgery, in which he had lost the ability to throw a football across the room, let alone for 20, 30, 40 yards on a football field. And as you know, Peyton should have won the next 2 MVPs, and Peyton went to 2 Super Bowls, and they did win 1, and he wasn't at his best. But his leadership skills, his presence, his aura, his charisma helped lift that team to a Super Bowl championship over Cam and company.
Right.
And what this guy is saying is that Tom is way better off now than Peyton was when he got to Denver, because Tom missed the one season in 2008, 12 years ago, with the ACL tear. And since then, he's been relatively healthy. And last year, he stayed relatively healthy. He had some kind of elbow issue, but I don't think it really affected him. And yet, Shannon, what you continue to ignore, because it doesn't fit in your narrative, is that Tom Brady took a pretty sorry offense, a pretty sorry collection of talent, and took it all the way to the 2 seed. They should have had a bye week. Tom Brady in the final regular season game, and you can't argue out of this one, he did what he always does. Yet another fourth quarter game-winning drive against the Dolphins. Put them up 24-20 with 3.5 minutes to go. And all Belichick's defense had to do, the GOAT's defense, was to stop Ryan Fitzpatrick from going 80 yards for a touchdown. And he pulled it off, 80 yards in 13 plays. With 5 seconds left, he had Mike Gesicki, his young tight end, for a 5-yard touchdown pass, and they lost 27-24 and lost the bye and lost the 2 seed. That's on Belichick, but he gets a complete pass for that. And Tom gets no credit for having to overcome no Gronk, no Antonio Brown after one game, no Josh Gordon because Belichick cut him, obviously no Chris Hogan because they let him go in the offseason. And all of a sudden, it was the worst tight end productivity in the whole NFL as a unit because their go-to tight end was 39-year-old Benjamin Watson. The running game became mediocre at best. The offensive line was mediocre at best without its starting center, David Andrews. And they tried at the trade deadline. He spent, Belichick, a second-round pick on Mohamed Sanu. Help me out. Did that work? He was a bust. So it leaves only Julian Edelman, who needed shoulder surgery, who led the league in drop passes, who had cracked ribs and a bad knee. And Tom somehow lifted that mess up to the 2 seed until Belichick spit the bit. I don't know. I thought Tom was actually pretty good last year, and I think he's going to be great next year.
But here's the thing, Skip. You failed to mention that Tom Brady threw an interception, a pick six, in that game that gave Miami 7 extra points. Okay, that was standing. But again, when they lost that game to Miami, they didn't get knocked out of the playoffs. They went from the 2 to the 3 seed. They still had a home playoff game. Do you think Tom Brady played good in that game? Now, I remember the greatest come from behind in Super Bowl history. Tom Brady orchestrated that without Gronk. And everybody, including you, talk about he did this without Gronk. Now you belly aching that he needs Gronk. He just orchestrated the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history without Gronk. And you, oh, Gronk, look what he did without Gronk. Look what he did without this one. Look what he did without that one. Now, all of a sudden, you see, that's, again, I got no problem. I think Tom Brady is historically transcendent great. But when he loses, it's always everybody else's fault. When he wins, you don't mention Gronk. You didn't mention Edelman. You didn't mention Hogan or Amendola. You didn't mention they led the league in playoff rushing, averaging 162. You don't mention that he had 0 touchdowns and a pick in the Super Bowl with a 39 QBR. All you want to mention is, what about that defense? Held the highest scoring offense to 3 points. But it was Tom Brady. You only want to blame Coach Belichick when Tom Brady loses, but you don't mention anything when they win. Because, again, look at what he did to the greatest show on turf. Look at what he did to the Rams, the 2.0 greatest show. Nah, it was all Brady. But the moment he loses, he gave up 41. He gave up 41 to Nick Foles. He gave up this. Ryan Tannehill, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Okay, what did Tom do?
Well,
his first Super Bowl.
You're revising history. Yeah. Okay, but in the Atlanta epic comeback, he did have Amendola and he did have Hogan, and he obviously had a much healthier Edelman. So he didn't need Gronk. He had James White. I give you all that. But you keep reaching back to the old days, and I keep going forward to the new days because I think he's virtually completely healthy. And I saw no drop-off in skill last year. I thought the arm talent looked the same as always. I thought the release was just as quick. I thought the accuracy was just as deadly. And I thought the velocity was just what it's always been, which is not great, but good enough. So he's raring to go at going on 43 with a new challenge. And I like his chances next year a whole lot better than I like Bill Belichick's.
Okay, how about this here? Since you say you don't want to go back, and let's go to 2019. Talk to me about 2019. Let's not go back. I don't want to go any further. Oh, but I forgot. We're not supposed to judge Tom on 2019. So how am I supposed to judge him, Skip? You tell me I can't go back. This guy don't want me to judge him on what I last saw. So how the hell do I evaluate Tom Brady? Just take it, oh, well, he won 6 Super Bowls, and that's good enough, Shannon. No, that ain't how you do it.
Okay. No. All you need to know about 2019 is the Patriot receivers were dead last in the whole NFL in separation from defenders. That's all you need to know. I'll judge him off that. Simple as that.
And
let's change the subject.
And all you need to know.
Yeah.
I was going to say all you needed to know is that the quarterback was 19th in QBR and 27th in completion percentage. Okay. That's all you need to know.
Okay. All right.
No mercy.
Jerry Jones at it again last night, dropped another highly controversial bombshell on the National Football League. Out of nowhere, out of left field, he signed Aldon Smith. 1-year deal, $2 million base, $2 million in sack incentives. Aldon Smith will be 31 years of age in September, has not played a single football game since November 15th of 2015. Once upon a time, for his first 4 years, Aldon Smith was as dominating a pass rusher as there was in the league. But you know what the problem has been? He has been suspended multiple times for violations of the NFL substance abuse policy and the conduct policy. So RJ Glazer has been actively involved in Aldon Smith's recent recovery program. And Jay says that Aldon Smith has been clean and sober for the last 9 months. And Jay Glazer says that it has been incredible how much he has turned his life around. So I ask you, Hall of Famer Shannon Sharpe, after 4 years out of football, can you see Aldon Smith contributing at all to the 2020 Dallas Cowboys?
Skip, I hope he can. Before I go any further, Skip, I shortchanged it. His first 2 years, Aldon Smith had the most sacks in NFL history through his first 2 seasons. Through his first 3 seasons, he had the third most behind Reggie White and Derek Thomas. That goes to show you the trajectory that this young man was on before the demons got a hold of him and sidetracked him. Skip, let this sink in. This is what I want people to do at home. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you haven't worked out in a year. 1 year. You know how hard it is to get your body back in shape? Okay, so imagine taking off 4 years, and not only do you want to get your body in shape to look good, aesthetically pleasing, you want to go and have it perform at the highest level in a professional sport. That's what Aldon Smith is up against. It's not easy. Trust me, Skip, that is the reason why, like when the offseason was rolled around, I would only take a month off. But I would take a month off from lifting. I would still do, run some wind sprints or something like that, because I realized as I started to age how difficult it was for me to get back in tip-top shape. It started taking me, instead of 4 weeks or 6 weeks, it was taking me 8 weeks. It was taking me 10 weeks. I was like, nah, I can't do this. And I started taking off weight because I wanted to be lighter. Skip, it's just hard for me to believe a guy can miss that kind of time and come back and perform at an elite level. Now, I understand if he gives them 3. See, Skip, for me, when I look at a guy like this, I'm not looking at him, can he give me double-digit sacks? Can he have a game? Can he have a game or 2 in which he's disruptive? Skip, if he wins you a game, strip sack, they're driving, he gets a strip sack, you win the game, or he gets a sack that knocks them out of field goal range, that's probably be worth the signing, considering what you paid him. You paid him $2 million basically in base salary. If he can win you a game or 2, and that game or 2 might help you get into the playoffs, Skip, it would be worth it. I think we can't put it in the context, or we're going to see a double-digit sack, or we're going to see 19 sacks. No. Can he be disruptive enough to win you a game or 2 and get you to the playoffs? He might just be able to do that.
I will take that. And I will be the first to admit to everybody watching, I'm desperate. I might be even more desperate than the Cowboys themselves are, because Robert Quinn was my sack master last year when I thought it was going to be DeMarcus Lawrence after he got $100 million. And DeMarcus played small last year. Maybe DeMarcus had a shoulder problem that was nagging all year, and maybe that slowed him down and handicapped him. But Robert Smith, I thought they could hold on to. And all of a sudden, Robert Smith got the deal of the century from the Chicago Bears, and there's no way Jerry could keep him after he had given Amari his $100 million, and he's going to have to give Dak whatever Dak ends up getting. So all of a sudden, glaring hole on the far side. Glaring hole on the far side of the line, no pass rusher. So I was hoping that because the new CBA says you cannot be suspended for a positive marijuana test, that Randy Gregory would get reinstated and that he would be that guy. I don't think Randy Gregory is an every down kind of guy. He's a little smaller. He's not as physically dominant as Aldon Smith is, or at least was. And so Randy Gregory was my only hope. And now I have a second hope that also is going to require reinstatement by Roger Goodell. It's not done yet. He signed the dotted line, did Aldon Smith. He's saying all the right things. He's been doing all the right things for 9 months. But now I have two sort of long shots together who might be able to give me some shot at the offside pass rusher from DeMarcus Lawrence. And I gotta, look, I'm being honest. I'm getting a little carried away here because I used to love Aldon Smith as a player. I was around him twice off the field when he was on shows that I did on ESPN. Not a nice guy. Troubled, difficult, had a lot of Charles Haley in him. That was the guy Jerry Jones stole from Carmen Policy in the 49ers that put the Cowboys over the top in the 1990s. Charles was just behaviorally very troubled. Just ugly incidents that helped him act his way out of San Francisco to Dallas, and he became the catalyst of 3 Super Bowls that should have been 4. But at least he was playing. He didn't take 4 years off. He took no time off at all.
Right.
He left one training camp and came to Dallas before the 92 season, and the rest is NFL history. But in this case, Aldon Smith was just like Charles. I had a lot of trouble as a reporter, as a journalist, with Charles off the field. A lot of trouble. We clashed constantly. But I loved him as a player. Same with Aldon Smith. I clashed with Aldon on TV, on First Take on ESPN. But on the field, my God, every time I watched 99, he leaped off my TV screen because he was 6'5", 265, maybe 270-ish. And he was virtually unblockable for 4 years. And now at least he's joining the same defensive line coach, Jim Tomsula, who was there coaching him for those first 4 dominating years in San Francisco. So maybe Jim Tomsula told Jerry Jones, I vouch. I believe in this young man. He's still, he's going on 31, but played very little football for a 31-year-old. But I think Jim Tomsula vouched and said, I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. Let's take a fairly low-risk money shot on him because we could cut him and pay him next to nothing if he doesn't show us anything in training camp. So, Shannon, I like the move. I don't love the domestic violence in his background. I just don't love it. But at least he's not a Greg Hardy, and I'm ready to take the shot. And I think it's a good shot to take.
Well, Skip, look at it. Like in our community, we play a game called Spades. And what you have with Randy Gregory and Aldon Smith is 2 possibles, and you hopefully they can get you a book. You hope combined those 2 guys can possibly get you something around double-digit sacks. And if they do that, it was a great signing. It was a great, reinstatement on both of those guys' part. It would be an even better signing on Jerry's part if between Randy Gregory and Aldon Smith, they can get you double-digit sacks. And that's all you can hope for, Skip. But could you imagine Michael Phelps taking 4 years off, no swimming, doing nothing, and going to the Olympic and winning gold medals? You don't believe that? I don't believe that. And that's what you're asking Aldon Smith to do, Skip. He took 4 years off. You're asking him to come back. Now, we don't know when the season's going to start, but you're going to ask him to pick up where he left off and give you something. Could Michael Phelps swim? Sure. But the likelihood of him taking that amount of time off, Skip, and winning races, competing at the highest of levels, we don't think that's very likely. That's my concern with Aldon Smith. You take that kind of time off and to try to come back and compete at the high. Skip, this is the NFL. This is the creme de la creme.
No mercy.
The Athletic has chosen the best player ever to wear each number in NBA history from 00 all the way up to 99. Number 3 caught my eye because Allen Iverson was chosen over Dwayne Wade. Shannon Sharpe, do you agree with that choice?
Skip, I probably would have went with D. Wade for the simple fact the 3 championships and the Finals MVP. And when he was clearly the best player on the first championship team, I think it was 06, in which they won. They come from down 0-2, and they ended up beating the Dallas Mavericks. But Skip, their careers are very similar as far as credentials. D-Wade was a 2-time first-team All-NBA. AI was 3-time All-NBA, 8 for D-Wade, 7 for AI. 13-time All-Star for D-Wade, 11 for Allen Iverson. And as I mentioned, D-Wade won the Finals MVP. AI won the regular season MVP. So I probably, Skip, would have leaned more to D-Wade and D-Wade was a first-team All-Defensive, 3-time All-Defensive team. AI didn't give you a whole lot on the defensive side, Skip. He could steal the ball, but he was so small. He was probably maybe 6 foot tall, maybe $155, $160, soaking wet. So he didn't really provide a whole lot on the defensive side. But Skip, he was spectacular. And he was, all these guys that's wearing these elbow sleeves, where do you think they got that from, Skip? They got that from AI. AI wore the elbow sleeve. AI came with the cornrows. They changed the rules because of AI. Because AI T-shirts were getting bigger. He was $165 and had a T-shirt on that would have fit Shaq. And his pants would have fit Kevin Garnett. So David Stern said, no, that's enough for that. His impact might have been different than D-Wade's in the NBA, but I would have went D-Wade, Skip, for the simple fact I think D-Wade accomplished a little more as far as championships than AI. But I can understand, but I'm not disappointed that they chose AI.
I'm disappointed. I'm offended. I'm still shell-shocked over it because I am the biggest Dwayne Wade fan. And I love to watch Allen play. AI was spectacular. He was box office. He was marquee. He was highlight show. He was the littlest man putting up the biggest numbers with eye-popping, mind-bending moves and crossovers on big guys. And again, he was must-see TV for me. But I'm sorry, he just was not a better overall, more valuable basketball player than Dwayne was. Dwayne was a leader. Dwayne was a big game player. Dwayne was a big playmaker down the stretch. There's nobody more clutch than Dwayne making big plays. And I will forever give Dwayne credit for teaching LeBron how to be a pro, how to win championships. Obviously, LeBron more gifted than Dwayne because LeBron's as gifted as anybody there ever was. But it took Dwayne helping LeBron, big brothering LeBron, for LeBron to break through against the Baby Thunder that year. And I give Dwayne credit for carrying that first team in 06 to that championship. As you point out, he was the Finals MVP. And he was 3 times all defense. I give Allen this. He could steal the ball because he led the league in steals 3 times. But it was 13 All-Stars for Dwayne Wade to 11 for AI. And just in stature, in NBA magnitude, Dwayne Wade was on this level and Allen was on some other level that wasn't up there in that sort of almost Rushmore level. And I'm sorry, Shannon, I would have just gone Dwayne Wade, slam dunk, no second thought about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I said, AI was special, Skip. But like I said, I would have went D-Wade also for the simple fact, Skip. I believe he's a little more accomplished, especially with the championships. But, you know, the All-NBA, the All-Stars, they are very, very close. And so I'm going to lean, when it comes down to it, Skip, I'm always going to lean towards the guy that won the championships as opposed to the guy that didn't win the championship. Unless it's a situation like Barry Bonds. Now, if you got Barry Bonds, Skip, and you're just like, we've never seen anything like you before, that's a whole different ball game. But I would have gone with D-Wade also.
No mercy.
Let's take it home. Back in November of 2018, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson went head-to-head in a high-stakes pay-per-view golf match, as you might remember, that went 22 holes. Phil finally won it with a 4-foot birdie putt in near darkness. Now they're talking about doing battle again, only with partners. Get this, Tiger and Peyton Manning would take on Phil and Tom Brady. So Shannon Sharpe, would you buy the pay-per-view to watch 2 aging golfers and 2 aging quarterbacks play golf?
Skip, look, right about now, considering there's no sports on, and I've watched every interesting football game of the last 10 years and every interesting basketball game of the last 100 years, I'll take anything that's live. And I'll be watching Phil and Tiger, not so much Peyton. Skip, I'll watch him roll a wheel of cheese down the hill and see the guys chase it. That's what I want to see. I just want to see anything that's live right now other than something talking about the COVID-19, excuse me.
Yep. So I bought the first pay-per-view and I watched all 22 holes. And in the end, I don't think I got my money's worth because it didn't feel like it quite lived up. But I got to tell you, I will buy this pay-per-view if it actually comes to fruition. It's got to get approved by the PGA Tour, because the truth is, Peyton Manning he's an 8 handicap. Tom Brady's like a 9 or 10 handicap. So they could hit key shots and make clutch putts, key putts, that would keep me interested for at least 18 holes. So I would love to see the two aging quarterbacks actually save the day of the pay-per-view that Phil and Tiger at, what are they, Phil's almost 50 and Tiger's 44. I want to see the two quarterbacks play golf.
Well, Skip, here's the thing. It's different hitting around a golf with your buddies as opposed to playing next to two icons and having millions and millions of people watching. That's a whole different ball game, putting and chipping and driving the golf ball.
So I'm with you, but unfortunately I had so much more to say, but we are out of time. Remember, we're on tomorrow, 10 to noon Eastern. Please stay tuned for Colin. Stay safe, stay strong, stay home.